I want to welcome Lynn. Lynn works for the London Institute for Contemporary Christianity, which is really these days the British Institute for Contemporary Christianity, because they're international, but they're based here in Britain, and not particularly in London, other than the fact their building is in London, but most of them work all over the country. And Lynn's going to be leading us in these sessions, and I'm going to be doing some opening prayers and some other things, and be there to enable you in the fortnight in between if you want to ask questions, or send those on to Lynn, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The chat at the bottom of the page is enabled. If you do want to put some questions in or anything, please do that, but don't get completely distracted by it. Some people are really good at doubling up and doing things. The majority of the time, although there aren't very many of us, it's probably better to go have your microphone turned off. But if there are things that we ask you specifically to undo that, then please do, and come in if you're comfortable doing that. If you're struggling with doing all those things, then just have it how it is and don't worry. Okay, we're going to open with some prayers, which are going to start with some silence. There is a song in it, and some that you don't have to sing, it's to listen to, called God Has Chosen You. There's a choice with Zoom of doing it, either giving you the link and you doing it, which works better in that you definitely get it, but it sends you away and then you have to come back again. So I'm going to do it through Zoom, but if it's not quite right, I apologize now. I won't know because it will sound right to me. Okay. So let's go to this. Whoops. I don't know why it did that, because I asked it to do it from the beginning. Slideshow from the beginning. Right, so let's just be still for a moment and allow ourselves to recognize God's presence with us. We've been chatting away, but let's just be still. God is with us always. You might like to watch as the candle is lit. And as the candle is lit, to think of the people that you've met today, even through Zoom. Maybe you haven't met anybody. To think of the conversations you've had, things you've heard or you've read. Whatever it is that's been part of today, the busyness or even the emptiness. But now together, to come intentionally and offer ourselves to this time, to this place, where we're sitting right now, but somehow together. As you listen to the reading, listen out for one word that speaks to you. I'm not going to ask you what that word is. I just want you to listen to this reading deeply. It's from 1 Peter, the very beginning of it. The first letter of Peter to the early church starts like this. I, Peter, am an apostle on assignment by Jesus, the Messiah, writing to exiles scattered to the four winds. No one is missing, not one forgotten. God the Father has his eye on each of you and has determined by the work of the Spirit to keep you obedient through the sacrifice of Jesus. May everything good from God be yours. So just rest your mind or your eyes on one word that speaks to you, or one phrase. You might like to write it down and reflect on them as part of tonight or in the fortnight to come. Maybe you feel like an exile, or you feel scattered apart from everyone you know. Maybe you feel forgotten and need to hear that no one is missing from God's loving gaze. Or perhaps you heard that promise that everything good from God can be yours. So let's listen to this song. Maybe sing along if you know it, but definitely on mute. It's called God Has Chosen Me.
God to bring good news to the poor. God has chosen me. God has chosen me to bring new sight to those searching for light. God has chosen me, and to tell the world that God's kingdom is near, to remove oppression and break down fear. Yes, God's time is near, God's time is near, God's time is near, God's time is near. God has chosen me, God has chosen me to set alight a new fire. God has chosen me, God has chosen me to bring to birth a new kingdom on earth. God has chosen me, and to tell the world that God's kingdom is near, to remove oppression and break down fear. Yes, God's time is near, God's time is near, God's time is near, God's time is near. God is calling me, God is calling me, in all whose cry is unheard. God is calling me, God is calling me to raise up the voice with no power or choice. God is calling me, and to tell the world that God's kingdom is near, to remove oppression and break down fear. Yes, God's time is near, God's time is near, God's time is near, God's time is near.
So let us pray. And as you see, I hope the responses, even on mute, we can join in together in hearing it. Holy God, we come from scattered places around our diocese, and we ask you to speak to us. Help us to listen. Holy God, in these times we can feel alone and forgotten. Help us to know your presence. Holy God, we know that you promise your good things to us. Help us to receive them. Amen.
Thank you, Pauline. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up. And it's lovely to be here with you all this evening, and thank you, Pauline, for your introduction. And just to tell you a little bit more about me, Pauline said I was many, many miles away. I'm actually in the northwest. I live directly between Chester and Liverpool. I live with two men, and we are all very avid Liverpool football club supporters. So whilst we're between Chester and Liverpool, we've definitely got a bit of a orientation towards Liverpool. My husband is Phil, and I've got a 13-year-old son who is really trying to come to terms with lockdown. He's a very active young man. He used to swim every single day. He's a competitive swimmer. So we've been doing all sorts of things in the back garden to help him practice his swimming techniques without water. Very interesting what you can do with a skateboard. It's lovely to be with you all this evening. And tonight is all about getting to know each other a bit as we go in this programme, and very much introducing you to the concepts as we think about whole life disciple making. Some of you will already very much be in this way of thinking, and hopefully this will be a time of just affirming what you already know and thinking fresh about it, and maybe taking this space to pray with God, asking him what he wants to say to you afresh. For some of you, some of the language might challenge you, might make you think a bit differently. But this is space just to explore this together, whether we're challenged by it or we feel joyful by it, and just to be really open and honest. And what I'm also hoping that it's a space where it's safe to be vulnerable as well, and just really be honest with each other. I spent most of my life, if you've read my background, I've spent most of my life in the business world. I started off in retail fashion many years ago. I don't know where the years have gone, and then ended up in banking and worked for many years leading strategic change in banking. And I've been a Christian since I was a little girl. And in all that time, as I look back and I think of the things that God has been doing in my life, is I was a disciple in the places where he put me every day, really vast and diverse sometimes. I've played a big role in the church for many years. I've been in lay leadership before I became a priest in 2017. So most of my time is in lay leadership, but just seeing what God is doing in the gathered church where I've been, but also as I've been sent out into my life, in my work, as a wife, as a mum, as a friend, as a daughter, in all those different aspects. So this is a time for you to really think about what God's been doing in your life and what he's going to be doing in your life, maybe in the coming years. So what I'd like to start by doing is just getting to know each other a bit. And it would be lovely if we could all unmute. And if we could just go through around the group and share a little bit, and just really simple, we can see your name, but maybe tell us whereabouts in the diocese you're from, and a little bit about what encouraged you. Why did you actually feel you wanted to join in with this programme? What was it about this that you thought, this is the time for me to engage in this programme? So let me just be able to see you all. Shall we start? Maybe Joan, would you be happy to start?
Yeah. Well, I'm Joan Townsend. I live and I've lived for the last 50 odd years in South Surrey, which is about as far from the Forest of Dean as you can get in the county, on the Wiltshire border. I am a reader. I'm also a spiritual director. I was baptized a Catholic, was brought up, went to Sunday school, well, basically just to get out of my parents sent us to Sunday school because there were loads of us and it was a way of getting rid of us. So that was Methodist, and I have ended up as an Anglican. So, which is great, which is absolutely great. And I decided that I didn't enroll until yesterday because something was happening that was not now happening because of lockdown. And so I only enrolled yesterday, but I'm a great believer that you know, we have to live our faith every single day of the week, every day, every hour of the day, and every day of the year.
Brilliant. That's great, Joan. Thank you. And Anne, can you share next?
I can only see your screen on my screen. Can't see anything else. Right.
That's okay. We can all see you, Anne, I think.
Okay. I'm retired, so I'm not doing anything. That's all.
Well, tell us about retirement. Tell us what you do in your retirement.
I was a teacher in a former life and lived overseas for many years, but since coming back to this country, I've sort of got involved with the diocese and ended up being ordained as a distinctive deacon, and then retired from that about 4 years ago. So here I am, floating about.
And tell us where you live.
Not very much. Pardon?
And tell us where you live and tell us about your family and things that are important to you.
Yeah, I live in Cheltenham. I have a married son and family with 2 granddaughters, and I have a married daughter. They live in Leeds and Oxford, respectively. And I have been involved in ministry with old people and hospitals and care homes and chaplaincy, but that all came to a grinding halt. And so I haven't actually done anything since March in any of those areas. So this is something to do.
Well, Anne, it's great to have you here with us. And I just really hope that in these next couple of weeks, God will really speak to you about what maybe you have been doing in these last couple of months that you maybe haven't even realised. Sometimes God wants us to stand still. And I think that's really helpful too. Thank you. Fred, can we come to you next?
Yeah, I live in the Forest of Dean. I've lived here all my life. I was born in the forest, lived in a little village, and I live just outside Coalford at the moment. Been to church all my life, from a little boy of about 3, all Anglican churches. I've been church warden, was church warden for 16 years, and I'm in a parish of 6 churches at the moment. I've done all sorts of things, but at the moment I'm a Third Order Franciscan, as Pauline would know. I'm the co-convener of the Gloucester and Forest group, but I'm just about to step down from that. It's quite strange because I decided I would step down a few weeks ago, and I knew God had something else for me to do. So this is it, I guess. Yeah, I got 2 lovely boys, both of them married, 3 lovely grandchildren, and another grandchild on the way. Yeah, that's me really. I've done a lot through. I've done marathon running. I play cricket. I still play cricket. I go to the gym 4 times a week. So I know a lot of people, and they know me as a Franciscan, as a church person, which is nice. And a lot of people talk to me. They ask me for prayers and all sorts of things. So I'm just glad that God uses me. Okay.
That's brilliant, Fred. Thank you. I'm a marathon runner too. And in our house, we've got 3 Forest of Dean water bottles, because when I come down to work, Pauline, my husband and son go cycling in the Forest of Dean. So,
all right. I might see you around sometime, especially in the summer. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's come to Marina and John next.
We can't see ourselves either. There we are.
So if I say to you, don't do it now, but any of you, if you click on where it says view, so you might have a little box up in your right hand corner that looks like a noughts and crosses grid. Mm-hmm. You click on that, and instead of putting speaker view, you put gallery or side by side, and you should be able to see other people as well.
Okay. It's rather a long story, so I'll try and keep it brief. John and I moved to Newnham at the end of July. So we have joined St. Peter's Church here, but we are very new Anglicans, having been in a non-denominational church for 29 years, I think, prior to coming to Newnham. But we really feel that God wants to use us here in the village and the wider area. So we're sort of, and unfortunately we've moved in lockdown, which is difficult. But we're gradually getting to know people and finding our way around and that sort of thing. and one of the reasons we signed up to do the course, partly because the topic is, does interest us, or must interest every Christian, obviously, how you can be more effective in your Christian life. But also because we have never done anything like this through the Anglican Church before. We've done lots of courses and things like that, but not through the Anglican Church. And we wanted to see how it works, what happens, what you do, what you're going to teach us. So we're really quite excited about that. Just briefly, we have 3 grown-up children. We have a son who lives in Wiltshire. He has 2 children, so we've got 2 little grandchildren there. We have twin granddaughters from our daughter who lives in Ireland, and our youngest son and his wife live in Melbourne in Australia.
Wonderful, thank you. John, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Marina summed it up very well.
Brilliant, thank you.
We've been married for quite a few years.
Do you know your place then, John?
Definitely.
Brilliant, thank you. Peter, can we come to you next?
Yeah, so I'm Peter. I live in the south of the diocese near Whitlander Edge. Why did I want to do this? Well, I love the LICC and my meetings with Mark, and I've done Fruitfulness on the Front Line and been an executive toolbox. And with Pauline, I helped lead the Confident Disciples group here in Gloucester Diocese for a while. But I'm also very conscious in a sort of a childlike sort of way of being open-handed, that whilst I feel very clearly called to be a big toe and to provoke and nudge people in the corporate world, which is what I'm ordained to do, really. I work for a Japanese president on corporate strategy and elephant spotting and things like that. But actually, I feel like some of your stories, times change, and that might well continue, but I want to be open-handed and see what other things emerge. So, and also, Lynn, I'd heard about you, but I've never met you, so I kind of wanted to hear your story and all the rest of it. So thanks for helping us. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Lovely to have you with us. And Debbie, can we come to you next? You need to unmute.
So, hi, I'm Debbie. I'm married to Steve, who's a curate. I actually work as a families development minister. So it's fabulous because I'm passionate. Those of you know me, I've got several passions in life. One is working with children. I was a teacher in a former life, so I've moved on now to being a families worker. But my other passion is rural ministry, and we live in a very rural communities, and just engaging with people where they're at, and trying to get things up and running where we can meet with as many people in a variety of different ways. So I feel very blessed to be doing that and actually being paid to do it, which is amazing. So I've got married to Steve, and we've got 2 almost grown-up children. So we've got a daughter who's 20, who's actually in university in Chester, so she's very close to you, and a son who's 15. So yes.
Brilliant, thank you, Debbie. That's wonderful. And Rachel.
Yes, I'm Rachel. I live in Cheltenham, but on the Gloucester edge of it. And I am a doctor in Gloucester Royal. So at the moment, I look after older people with hip fractures, not doing the surgery, but trying to get them as ready as they can for an operation that is forced on them because they've fallen over. They're probably not the fittest people, and we have to try and get them through major surgery if we can. I'm married to Godfrey. I have 3 children who are, the youngest flew the nest this year, so he's gone off to Bath University. We spent some time in Tanzania, so we came back in 2008. I'm sort of between 2, I go to 2 churches. I go to the church in Warden Hill, where I'm a reader, and I also belong to St Matthew's, where I go with my husband and used to be my family in the evenings. And actually in our home group in St Matthew's, we did fruitfulness on the front line, which very much enjoyed. So in a sense, I thought, well, this is going to be similar. But then I thought, well, actually, life has moved on a bit. I'm doing a different job. I'm not doing as much at church because of lockdown. So why not dip into it?
Super. Thank you, everyone. Now, I've asked everybody, haven't I? I've been working
Except
around
me. And not everybody does know who I am.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's just that I don't think Marina and John will know who I am. I think probably everybody else knows who I am. I've got a long title, Marina and John, and you don't need to know it. But basically, the shortened version of it is that I'm head of discipleship and vocation, and it's my responsibility really in the diocese to enable people to engage in whole life discipleship and to train people to enable others to do it. So it's a mix of training and things. And I'm based in Gloucester and normally work next door to the cathedral, but at the moment work from home. And I'm an ordained clergywoman, but that doesn't matter for this job really.
Brilliant. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you. Pauline started us off in our worship today with these verses from 1 Peter. I'm not going to go through them again now, but one of the things that I think would be really useful to do sometime this week, if you've got a chance to do it, or at the weekend, is to take time in your space, in the way you like to read the Bible, and to read the whole of 1 Peter. Pauline said, what were the words that came out for you? And we're not going to talk about what are the words that shone out. I have to say, hearing Pauline read from the message tonight, I already had new words jumping out at me, and my goodness, assignment really hit me around the head tonight. And it's really interesting this is the NIV version here. Pauline read the message. It is good to read the different versions and see what God is saying to it. So I would encourage you, as the first step in this, is to read 1 Peter at least once. Sometimes when I'm really, really wanting to dwell in it, I read it once, then pray, then read it again, then just take some silent space and then read it again. And I've been a bit shocked by some of the things that have really shone out, shocked in a great provocative way, of the things that have really shone out to me. So at least this week, it would be great before you start looking at all the other material, just to read 1 Peter. That would be great. And just practically, before we get into some of the content, the way this program is set up, it is set up as an online program. We also, when the world is in a different place, do this in physical gatherings, this sort of material, but this is online. The majority of the program is developed for you through handbooks. And you should have all received from Ruth today a set of 4 handbooks. Could anybody shout out if they haven't received that? By now you should have them in your inbox, but have done absolutely nothing with them. So if there's a bit of you thinking, should I have read those? Absolutely not. They should just be waiting for you for after this evening. They are designed to try and consider different learning styles. So there are some pictures, there are plenty of words, there are plenty of spaces for self-reflection. I've sent the handbooks to you in 4 different handbooks, and they're in 4 because where they're a different handbook is where I'm saying you should probably tackle this sort of material together and then rest in it. Don't jump straight to the next. So that's why they're designed as 4. And at the end of the handbook 4, there you are directed to other reading material, our website, other ways to connect with us, so as you can get some of our weekly emails if you want to keep thinking about this sort of material. So that's all at the end of handbook 4. They are set up as Word documents. That's so as you can use them however you want. If you want to type into them, you can do. But just be aware when you start typing into them, all the pictures start shifting about. You might want to save them as a PDF so they don't shift about at all, and just print them. You can either print them in just black and white and save your color toner, and then write into the spaces, or you can just keep them online and write your notes separately. So they're there for you to do whatever you want with them. And Pauline mentioned earlier, I am here over the next few weeks. If there is something that particularly strikes you, that you feel you want to talk about it some more, you can email Pauline with questions or thoughts, and either Pauline or myself will come back to you with queries. Or if there's something you're really challenged by and just want to challenge it, please do. So we are here. So whilst you're going through this learning by yourself, you're not going through it by yourself. You're going through it as part of a community, and we are here to support you in any way we can. And the final thing I really wanted to say on a practical note is you're not on this on your own. You can take as much time or as little time as your life allows you to do. Some of you have very busy lives that maybe don't allow lots of time. It is your choice. And I just want to say, I've started praying. As soon as I got the names from Ruth, I started praying for each of you, and I will be continuing praying for you. And I'm sure Pauline will be doing exactly the same, and we'll probably have times where we meet together and pray for you all. You are in our prayers, and we're really hoping that God just highlights something new to each of us in the weeks to come, or reaffirms something that was already in us that he wants us to know about. So I'm just going to pause there. Does anybody have any questions about the structure before I move on? No? Good. Well,
sorry.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm on mute or not.
No, we can hear you. Well, you've muted
okay.
yourself. That's it. You're okay now.
Okay. It was just to ask whether the 4 workbooks, you said we didn't have to read them before tonight, which was a good thing. But do we need to have worked through them before the next one in 2 weeks' time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But please, no pressure.
No.
It's ideal.
That's the goal.
Yeah, if you can, that would be great.
I think process-wise, Lynn, maybe it would help to say vaguely what you're going to do in the next session, so that they know that it's not about coming back and reading back all their answers and things.
Oh no, not at all. What we're going to be doing is sharing with each other what were the things that really came out for us. We're going to be taking some of the content and having discussion groups about it, going back through it. What were the key learnings? What were the things? I always believe that God speaks through each of us and hearing each other's voices. So there will be lots and lots of time for discussions, and we'll do that in small groups, so you don't have to speak to the whole group. But I'll be posing things to reflect on and questions, but it will just be about the content that you've read through. There will not be new material in that next one. And the other part of that session is to say, what's next? And that's no pressure again. That's what might God be saying to you, what's next? What are you going to be encouraged to do with this thinking? And how might you want to live that out in COVID times and beyond COVID times? Let's move on. Here's a couple of quotes, and those who have been involved with LICC before may have seen these before. But Mark Green, this is one of his famous quotes when he put together what he called the Imagine essay. It went out in an Evangelical Alliance magazine and became really quite famous after that, which it wasn't expected. But Mark's quote was, "The UK will never be reached until we create authentic learning and praying communities that are focused on making whole life disciples who take the opportunities to show and share the gospel wherever they relate to people in their daily lives." And that essay started a whole pile of Imagine project work that started to understand what was happening in our local churches, in our gathered churches, and how we could equip and enable people for their everyday lives. But what we were hearing through all of that research at that time, and through church leaders and through congregation members, is that people in the UK did not feel equipped to live their faith confidently or courageously, whatever word you'd prefer to use, in their everyday lives. And that really has become, especially in the last 10 years, what LICC have absolutely dedicated ourselves to. our passion is to see the UK released. I'm not going to read it tonight, but I was reading over the weekend the Great Commission. And when you just read the words of the Great Commission, it's in your handbooks for you to spend some time dwelling on. Those words of the Great Commission about how we're all called to be disciples in every nation, in every place where God has put us, is just such a stunning inspirational text. And John Stott, who was our founder, said we're called to double listening, listening to both the word and listening to the world where God has placed us in the time he has placed us. So how can we look to the Bible and look to the lives we're living in and really allow those to speak to us in our everyday lives? Here's a little video just to watch.
Every day, God sends us, his people, young, old, and everyone in between, out into his world, to the places we normally go, work and school, gym and shop, field and factory, to the people he's put us alongside, to do good work that brings good to others, ministering love and grace, snuffing out injustice, and speaking truth with kindness, sharing Jesus in word and deed, to see brows unfurrow, hearts soften, wounds heal, people set free. Home, school, work, a nation changed, day by day.
So just to say, in your handbooks, I've also put a number of links to videos for you. They're LICC videos. So in a number of places it says, please watch this video, and you just need to hover over it and click on it, and that will take you off to YouTube, and you'll be able to watch some of our videos that are normally incorporated within our video series. That little video is included within your first handbook. Some of you or all of you may be familiar with the Anglican 5 Marks of Mission, and you can read them there: proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, teaching, baptize and nurturing new believers, responding to human needs by loving service, seeking to transform unjust structures of society, and striving to safeguard the integrity of creation. I really love the 5 Marks of Mission. I think the only thing I would say for what we're doing is we'll be talking about each of these in some way throughout these this programme. But the one thing that sort of jars on me a little bit is it's not just about baptising and nurturing new believers. It's a lifelong journey of belief. And I do think this should be edited to say, nurture all believers. I don't think we ever stop learning. And in the work we do, and research tells us, those who have got an attitude to wanting to be lifelong learners, apprentices might be a nice word, are people where we're really seeing lots of fruit bear. So for this, if we could just say we're nurturing all believers, not new ones. And you will see the handbooks are split up into 3 challenges, the mission challenge, the discipleship challenge, and the church challenge. And all I want to do tonight is really just touch on them, so as you're getting used to the way things are structured. It's all there. Anything I say tonight will be included in what's to follow. So let's just start with the mission challenge. Mark Green is quite well known for this saying, life's a peach, not an orange. And he talks a lot about the sacred secular divide. And this is something I can really relate to. So I was a businesswoman for 27 years, and as I say, a lay leader. And a big part of my lay leadership role was in family and children's ministry. Absolutely loved it and adored it. one of the most blessing things is actually working with families, and children are just so beautiful watching their faith nurtured. But it does say in the setting, if you've read the Setting God's People Free report, there is somebody who reports this, and it really resonated with me. In all the years where I was in church as a lay leader, I got prayed for so many times for my work with family and children's ministry. So many times, and I know it was deeply appreciated, and I know for me it was a blessing to do it. And before we used to leave all the time to take the children and do all the things we were doing, some beautiful prayers were prayed for me. But I don't ever remember being prayed for the role I did in the business world, and I don't ever really remember being asked about it or the impact I was making. But my reality was I was a disciple in a place that really needed me to be a disciple. I led a lot of teams with very troubled people where the stress of work had big impacts on them, people who had addictions, alcohol, drugs, serious grief issues in their life, of loss. And yes, I did have to lead a lot of business projects, but a lot of my time as a leader was actually listening to people. And it was well known that I was a Christian in those places. But my church community didn't pray about that. They prayed for the work I was doing on a Sunday in the gathered church. But this is telling us that life isn't split up into different segments. It's not like an orange where we have a Sunday segment and a Monday and a mum segment and a dad segment or a retired person segment. Our whole lives are completely integrated as disciples, and with this great big impenetrable stone in the middle that is Jesus Christ. And we should be thinking about our lives much more as a peach that isn't segmented rather than an orange. And in the places we go, this, you may have seen these dots before, but if you haven't, the dots on the left-hand side represent our whole nation, our whole society, 100%. There are 100 dots there. I have actually sat and counted them. The corner in the red dots is representative of how many are actually involved in church in the UK across denominations, 6%. And when we're together in the corner in church, we're all together and it feels nice and bright and red. We're with like people. But what happens when we go out into our everyday life, when we're not all gathered together as a community, whether we're gathered online or physically, when we're sent out into our everyday lives, wherever that may be, in our communities, in a hospital, as teachers, wherever that is, what happens to us when we're surrounded by lots of people who are grey dots, who don't know Christ? Well, we have the opportunity to be bright red lights for Christ. And the question is, how do we stay bright red as disciples? And how do we infect and shine our light on those around us in the places we meet? And there's going to be lots of time for you over the coming couple of weeks to think about the place where God has placed you right now, which is what's really important to read that 1 Peter, where God has placed you. How might he be asking you to shine his light in that place, whatever season of life you are in? I've been particularly struck in these months of lockdown. I've led a very active life. I've got so many different places where I'm meeting people who aren't Christians. And I've really heard God say stillness, to stand still and to really listen to his voice and think about the places that I'm going to be in this world post-lockdown. But it's okay to stand completely still in this place. At LICC, we use the term frontline, and when we started using it, it wasn't nearly as well known as it has become in the last 10 months or so. I think everybody's talking about front lines. But when we use that terminology, we are thinking about where are the places where you meet someone who is not a Christian. Now, I've given you a few examples of my life. Mine are vast and varied. I like, we were talking about earlier, I like to run, I like the gym. I meet all sorts of people at running club and at the gym. I've got a 13-year-old son. Whilst I am now no longer allowed to take him to the school gate, I sometimes linger around school facilities in disguise and meet with other mums. But certainly as he was growing up, the school gate was an amazing front line for me to meet lots of people who weren't Christians. There was the workplace. There's my role in my family with family members who don't know Christ. There are so many different front lines in our lives. And what I'd love you to do now is to think about your life and where are the different front lines. And it's really interesting at the minute as people say, well, I'm stuck in the house, you know, we're in lockdown. Lockdown has even exposed people we've come in contact with, even if it's by telephone. Where are those places where we're meeting people? And just before we go into some breakout rooms, it's also useful thinking about in your church, when you meet, and at the minute that may be online, but when you meet either physically or online, where are the different places in your church where you are being encouraged to think about those places? Where are you hearing stories about the different front lines people are in? How often do you share stories in preaching, in teaching, in small groups? Those are just things to think about in your church context when you gather. How are front lines brought to the fore? You may have heard about This Time Tomorrow. And This Time Tomorrow is all about being able to capture those frontline stories. And in your handbooks, I've put quite a lot about capturing stories and encouraging each other to share what God's doing in our everyday lives. We're just going to get started, and Pauline's going to put us into 2 breakout rooms. And it's going to be either in a group of 4 or a group of 3 for 10 minutes. And if you could each take a turn, about 3 minutes each, a little bit less for the group of 4, tell each other about your front lines and what you think being fruitful might mean in those places. Have you got any stories or testimony to share about what God has been doing here? And how could your church better support and equip you in this place? And how would you like your church to be praying for you? Pauline's going to put all of these in the chat line, so you don't need to remember them. So we're going to go into breakout rooms and just share with each other about your front lines. Has anybody any questions?
Just a quick clarification on point 2, that what God has been doing here. Do you mean here on my front line or here in this group?
Sorry, here in my front line. Sorry. Yeah, that's good clarification. Thanks for that.
Okay.
But if God has been doing anything in this group already, then please do share that as well. So Pauline, if you would just break us out, please.
Okay, Lynn, you need to not accept to go in, okay, or come out of it. Yeah. So there are actually 4 in each group because Marina and John are in one of the rooms together.
Okay, great. Lovely.
Feels like we've just done a jailbreak or something.
Yeah.
So is that everybody back? Yeah, that's everybody back, isn't it? 9 of us, yep. So hopefully that was helpful to start thinking about your front lines. We're not going to spend much time on this, but does anybody have anything that they heard that really inspired them when they're talking about front lines, and anything they want to share? Anybody?
I think from our group, for me, the biggest change was Peter's gone worldwide and other people have gone house bound.
Right. Yeah. Do you want to expand a little bit when Peter's gone worldwide? How's that happened?
Zoom and Teams, because my role is to work for multinational. So yeah, so it's Japan and California and Chicago and Germany and all the different cultures. So that's quite fun. But it's kind of interesting hearing everybody in our group. In a way, our traditional front lines have all changed, partially because of sort of COVID, maybe also because people wanting different sorts of conversations now that they might have done a year ago. So it's quite a lot of change in the air. The way we do church is also messing some of that up as well. So lots of change taking place is what is coming out to me.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I know that in some of the people who are my friendship groups in my front lines, some of the conversations we're having now, we would not have been having a year ago. It has opened up opportunities, and I think people are wanting to talk in a way that they just didn't before, and asking me questions that I'm quite shocked about, and enjoying the opportunity. So we might be housebound, but people are still talking. Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. We're just going to move on now and talk about the Discipleship Challenge. There are different explanations of what we could use to define what a disciple is. And that might be something you want to do. Say, what is the definition that you would like to write that feels right for you, from your theological position, from your background. But for tonight, I'm just offering this for us. So please go away and try to make up your own. But learning to live the way of Jesus in my context at this moment, in our context at this moment. How is Jesus discipling you at this moment in time? How is that different from how you were being discipled in different seasons of your life? And in this season, and for what's maybe about to come, as we've been talking about, the world is changing. There is going to be a sense of a new reality. How might I, in this moment, model godly character? And these 6 M's, these are a framework that we've designed at LICC to encourage and help people to think about, what does it mean to be a disciple? Sometimes people jump straight to, you want me to be an evangelist, you want me to go and proclaim the good news everywhere I go. And this allows us to think a little bit more broadly. And then that's why we put them into these 6 areas. And in your handbook, in the handbook 3, there'll be a lot of time for you to explore what each of these means in your life with some explanation. I'm just going to touch briefly on them tonight. What does it mean to model godly character in amongst the world we're living in? There's so much going on at the minute, not just with COVID, but with all the election stuff. We're now very involved in what's happening in America as well as what's happening in Britain. People are angry. People are filled with fear. People want things to change. People are complaining a lot. How might you, in the society that we are living in, that is filled with fear and anxiousness, model godly character? How might we bring something that stands out as being different in that? How about we model a different way? What does modeling godly character mean to you? Who's somebody you look to and think, that's a person that really shines godly character? Somebody said earlier that they were born into Catholic tradition, and a few years ago I got to go to Rome, and I remember I got to be actually quite close to the Pope, and I'd just read a book that he had written before I'd seen him, and I just looked at this man and thought, gosh, you just model godly character in every word that comes out of your mouth. And I don't know, there's just your presence, even in a crowd of tens of thousands, there was something that radiated from this person. So who's the person you look to that models godly character? So I'm just going to have to switch my battery on here. Oh, my lights have gone out. Oh my goodness. That shouldn't have happened. Sorry, I'll keep talking and then I'll put my lights on when we're in. There we go. How do we make good work? You know, in this moment in time of your life, what does good work look like? I know, I mean, I wish this was something I was good at. I think in my life, I've only been able to do this good once. There are some people who are just brilliant at baking. That is just not me. It was a gift that I was not given, although I have made one good Victoria sponge. But I know that there's people who are spending a lot of time baking at the minute. They're inspired by Great British Bake Off and they're getting lots of ideas. And they're baking cakes for their community because that's what they're good at. Or they're just listening to somebody in my local gym. This has got nothing to do with the church, but somebody in my local gym has decided that on Christmas Day, they are going to build up a list of people who are going to ring people who are isolated, people who are on their own, and they're building a list of people. What are the gifts that you do have at this moment, even if it's just your voice, your ears to listen, of how you could make good work? How do we minister grace and love? How do we show love to the people who aren't dealing well with stuff at this time or at other times? How do we show grace when somebody is quite unpleasant to us? How do we show care and love in return? And in the places where we are, whether that's in our work or whether that's in our community or in our church, how do we mold culture that is Christ-like? What are the things that we need to do that show our Christ-likeness in action and in words and in deed? And what about being a mouthpiece for truth and justice? I remember once when I was in the bank, a senior manager came from the US to be my new boss, and he asked me to do something. It was a procedural thing that was just wrong. And I said, no. And he said, you need to learn to take responsibility as a senior manager. When I tell you to do something, you need to make sure you're actioning it. And I said, that's exactly what I am doing. I am taking responsibility as a manager, and I am saying no. And I'm saying no for your sake, because if I do what you're asking me to do, you are going to end up in a lot of trouble. I then went to find some evidence from the press where other banks had done what he'd asked me to do, and they'd ended up in a lot of trouble and been fined. I was able to demonstrate to him that it just was the wrong thing to do. Where in the place you are you able to speak up for integrity, for truth, and for doing the right thing? I think sometimes that's really hard, especially when we're speaking up not just for ourselves, but for those around us, and we're putting ourselves at risk by speaking for that. And the final of the M's is about being a messenger for the gospel. Where are the chances that you are being given where you can speak about what Jesus is doing in your life? It might not be some big proclamation. It might be simply telling a friend who doesn't know Christ over a cup of tea, this is what happened in my life, a really everyday story. This is what God has been doing in my life in these recent times. So that's just a whistle-stop tour of the 6M. So we're just going to go into another breakout room we're going to just go for 6 minutes this time and hear a few examples of in your life in the last couple of weeks, either from your own point of view or from a friend or from somebody in your family, where might you have witnessed one of these 6Ms in practice? Any one of them, and just take a minute or so each to talk about where you've seen them in action. And then when you get to your handbooks, there's a lot more time to spend on this and videos you can watch about each of those to explore them at a deeper level. So Pauline's just going to break us out once again into our last breakout room.
Welcome back. I thought I was going to have to finish everything because Lynn got kicked out completely.
Oh.
But while that happened, Lynn got kicked out completely. But there we go. She's back just in time.
Back now.
I find my way back. Okay, let me just fix this. So hopefully you were able to share some good experiences there. We're just coming to our close now, so I'm just going to very briefly talk about the church challenge. And again, in the handbooks, handbook 4, we go into a lot of detail on this. But what I'll be encouraging you to think as you reflect on your handbooks is 3 perspective shifts in the church. I've written some thoughts for you about what it feels like in the church in this current moment. And I've particularly been drawing your attention to what is it that you hold in your hand We know that God is good to us, and when he puts us in a place and he gives us a purpose, often the gifts that are needed for that time and that place we're already holding in our hands, but we don't always recognize it. So just at the beginning of this handbook, I'm asking you to take some time to reflect on what is it you're holding for this time and this place. And then we go on to explore 3 perspective shifts. The first one is confidence in whole life gospel. Really thinking about what we started at the beginning. You know, we don't separate this into sacred and secular. We're living out the gospel every day in everything we do, in the most mundane things and in the most ordinary things, as well as in the extraordinary. So how do we grow? And the word confidence might not sit well with us. So you might prefer to replace that with courage. How do we be courageous in living our lives in a whole life gospel? And how do we live that out in everything we do, in the tasks, in our work, in our relationships, in our play, in all things? And the next area we think about is clarity about a whole life mission strategy. Now, in our churches, we may or may not have a mission strategy. But what I'm just encouraging us to think about, often churches start from this position about recruiting the people of God to use some of their leisure time to join the missionary initiatives of church paid workers. That is sometimes where churches are starting from. And I'm really encouraging you not to be thinking in that way. Often what we see is, and these are wonderful things that churches do, but the activity that happens in the church building is often what gets a lot of focus, what gets a lot of attention and a lot of prayer, as well as the local initiatives that the church is involved in. And that might be different things that the church has organised, such as play groups, things in the community. Community activities that are organised by the church is the other area that often gets a lot of attention. And many churches have some sort of partnership with some sort of global mission strategy, working with a partner maybe overseas. The big issues of the day get a lot of attention. But what about the everyday life, the daily context? And we LICC feel that this red circle that we've highlighted here, if that got a lot of attention in our churches, if we give that a lot more focus, a lot part of our discussions in our small groups, in our preaching, in our teaching, we would really see some shifts starting to take place. So it's about adding a third cog, because obviously the local stuff we're doing is really important. The global stuff is really important. But what about adding that third cog in and making sure it's getting more of our attention? Every week we spend 110 hours of our life not in church activities. We spend probably on average person would spend about 10 hours of their life in church activities. Yet often our structures, our systems, our stories and our behaviour as a gathered church is all orientated around the 10 hours when we're together rather than the 110 hours when we're apart. What if in our churches we started to influence a mindset shift in this area to say, how does the 110 hours get a lot more attention? And I think it's important to recognise sometimes this isn't about making big shifts, not about making big transformational change all at once. Just the very small shift when you're flying an aeroplane, not that I've flown one, but I believe that when you fly an aeroplane and a slight shift of the wheel starts to make a very deliberate turn in direction. And it's the same for us. If each of us are making 1 degree shifts, we can start to see real change taking place in our individual lives and in our lives as a church community. And the final area that you'll be exploring is a conviction about care and pastoral equipping. And obviously pastoral care is a very important part of our church lives, especially at the moment. So many people need more care than before. And this isn't in any way suggesting that pastoral care doesn't have a really important place. But what about equipping people to be disciples? And what I'm doing in the handbooks is encouraging you to think about how we equip one another, how we encourage each other as disciples in our different areas of church life, how we listen to each other's stories and affirm in each other and what's happening in our lives, and that we get us worked up about equipping each other as we do about caring for each other. And there's lots of opportunities for you to reflect on who might be the people that God's putting on your heart that he wants you to equip in their journey of discipleship. And it might be you reaching out saying, I need someone to walk beside me, to pray for me, to care for me. I need equipping for this season of my life. And at the end of it, there's a direction to all of our resources that might help you dig into this further. But I've tried to give you quite a myriad of resources in your handbooks to get you started. So that's all I was going to share tonight. It was very much just an introduction. And I just want to repeat what I said earlier about, please do, if there's something that's challenging in the handbooks or you don't agree with or you'd like to talk about, please do get in touch, and be really delighted to hear your thoughts in the next week or so. I'm just going to hand over to Pauline to finish us in prayer. But just before I do, has anybody got any questions before you go off for the next couple of weeks? That's just great. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Peter, have you a question?
I was just clarify. So we're going to read all 4 sections before next time?
Yes.
Have our reflections notes. Okay, good.
If you can, and just again to point out that there are videos there. It's not just all reading. Some of it's reading, some of it's reflecting, and some of it's watching videos. So gives you quite a combination. And have fun. And do that stopping. Don't do all 4 booklets straight after one another. Do they get, or try not to leave them all to the last week and leave it in that way. I think I just want to add to what Lynn was saying, that some of us expect ourselves and others to go out and be courageous disciples and make sense of our faith out of the church community, when we actually don't have the courage to do it inside the church community. And part of that equipping one another is also about that, is giving other people and ourselves opportunities to talk about our faith, to make sense of our faith when we are together, so that when we are out, we've already exercised those muscles. Now, I'm conscious that it's already 9 and I've got 5 minutes prayers to do. Would you rather just finish now, or are you happy to pray together for 5 minutes? If you're happy to pray together, can you put your thumb up? But if not, if you want to go, if you need to go. Is that everybody? Yeah, it's not going to put anybody off. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Glasses on. So let's just be still again for a moment and reflect on some of what we've heard this evening. We won't have a long time of stillness or silence, but I wonder if you were to share back one word or phrase that you're going to take away with you this evening to reflect on, just one thing that has caught you. Just for a moment, think, is there just one thing that you want to go away and explore, or that God's spoken to you, or just one word that you feel? If you don't worry. Just hold that in your heart for a moment. Then I wonder if you've got the courage to turn on your mic and just say that one word or phrase for us.
On assignment.
Say again, Fred.
On assignment.
On assignment. Okay.
Change.
Change. Thank you, Anne.
Not one forgotten.
Not one forgotten. Thank you, Debbie.
Encouragement.
Thank you, Rachel. Encouragement.
New thing.
New thing. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to finish with a few prayers. What I'd ask you to do is respond on mute until the very last slide, which I'll tell you when it is, because otherwise you won't guess. But then ask us all to turn off. It's not the grace, but it's a way of blessing one another. So I will say the responses until we get to the very last slide. And then if we could unmute and say, it's after the words for tonight, actually. But there we go. So let's just be still again for a moment. For the love shared, we are grateful. For provision and nurture, we are grateful. For kindness given, we are grateful. For any sorrow we've caused, we pray forgiveness. For injustices ignored, we pray forgiveness. For the encounters with you, our God, today, in stranger and Fred, we bid you welcome. For the encounters missed today, we know that you always see us, even if we don't see you. For tomorrow, may we see you in ways For tomorrow, may we see you in ways expected and unexpected. And then if you unmute yourselves for tonight, and if we can look at the screen and look at one another and bless one another, we bless one another. May you have life in all its fullness. May everything good from God be yours.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, I needn't say travel well or anything like that, I hope. But thank you for joining us. If you've, at the end of the 2 sessions, you will get a feedback form. One person from you already has said you haven't received the handouts. Do check in your junk mail and everything like that, because they were sent to you all. But I'll probably send them all through Ruth to you again. And you already have my email address and phone number. So if you want to ask any questions of me, of Lynn, of anyone, if you do them through me, not through Ruth, so that there's a direct thing, then that would be lovely. And I can send them on to Lynn, and I can answer. So God bless you all.
God bless you.
Well, take well.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Lynn and Pauline.
God bless. Bye.